Chapter 4 of The Tragic Bride. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Roger Moline. The Tragic Bride by Frances Brett Young. Chapter 4. Gabrielle piloted Jocelyn, who was still in a good humor, to his bedroom door. Then she went to bed herself and slept as well as ever. Jocelyn, alone in his room, called for another bottle of whiskey and made a night of it. To be exact, he made 3 days of it, 4 less than might reasonably have been expected. For Gabrielle to have taken him back to Roscarna was out of the question, and so she went on quietly living at Maple's, and absorbing the strangeness of Dublin while he finished it out. The servants of the hotel were very kind to her, and the waiter who attended to Jocelyn's desires brought her night and morning bulletins of her father's condition that were tinged with a kind of melancholy admiration. "A wonderful gentleman for his age," he said. "There's many a young man would envy the likes of him. Sure, he'd drink the cross off an ass's back, so he would." Of course she met Radway. They met, as he had arranged, at Trinity College gates, and went for a long walk along the blazing quays of the Liffey. It was an unusual promenade for the month of August, but neither of them knew Dublin. He found her difficult. The affair did not develop along the lines that he had intended, and as his time was limited this made him anxious. With Gabrielle the anticipation was always so much more wonderful than the event. It thrilled him strangely to see her approaching when they met, this tall, slim girl with her splendid freedom of gait, her black hair, her pallor, her red lips. When he saw her coming, he would think of all the passionate things that he wanted to say to her, but as soon as they started on their walk together, she made the saying of them impossible. She was so obviously and vividly interested in other and unsentimental things. Her interest in the commonplace and, to his mind, unromantic irritated him, but an instinct of good manners, that was not the least of his charm, compelled him to humor her. Once she sat for a whole hour in a dark cellar that smelt of tallow, where a couple of men were engaged in making those enormous candles that people in Ireland light on Christmas Day. And once Radway was forced to follow her into the forecastle of a Breton schooner reeking of garlic, where she practiced the French that Considine had taught her. Later in the afternoon he took her to tea at Mitchell's, where she consumed the first ice of her life, and was so pleased with the sensation that she demanded a second, all of which was disappointing for Radway, who wanted to arouse her appetite for romance rather than ices. It seemed as if his nuances of love-making, the indirect methods of approach that modern girls expected, were wasted on her. In the evening he took her out to Howth, relying on the influence of time and place to help him in methods more primitive. It was incredible to him that she shouldn't, or perhaps wouldn't, realize what he was driving at. Apparently she didn't understand the first conventions of the game, and when her obtuseness forced him to a sudden and passionate declaration, she laughed at him. This damping experience, so unusual in the traditions of the wardroom, took the wind out of his sails. He decided that she had been making a fool of him, and that he had been wasting his time. With a desperate attempt at preserving his dignity, he took her back to Maple's, conscious all the time of her tantalizing beauty. He had planned a formal good-bye, but when he told her that his ship was sailing on the next day, she said, quite simply and with an unusual tenderness in her eyes, that she was sorry. "If only you meant what you say," he said, clutching at a straw. "Of course I mean it," she said. "I shall be very lonely without you. You're the first friend I've ever had. I wish some day," she added, "you could come to Roscarna." He told her that it was not at all unlikely that the Pennant would some day put into Galway, and she warmed at once to the idea. "How splendid!" she said. "I shall expect you. Don't forget to bring a gun with you." They walked up and down Kildare Street, making plans of what they might do. "But in a week you'll have forgotten all about it," she said. "Nobody ever comes to Roscarna." "Do you think that I could possibly forget you?" he protested. This time she did not laugh at him. "No, I don't think you will," she said, and then, after an awkward silence, "Please don't take any notice of what I said this evening. I don't really understand that sort of thing." Then they said good bye. It was a queer, unsatisfactory ending for him, but her last words had reassured him. Thinking it over in the train on the way to Kingstown, he decided that she had been honestly and quite naturally amused at the conventional phrases of a modern lover, and the realization of this only made her more unusual and more desirable. It would be a strange experience to meet her in her proper setting, and if the Pennant should give him the opportunity he determined not to miss it. Next morning the ship left Kingstown for Bermuda. It was not in Radway's nature to take these things lightly. At a distance the memory of Gabrielle gained a good deal by imagination. It seemed to him that she was far too precious to lose, and the fact that she was a cousin of the exclusive Halbertons settled any social scruples that might have worried him. He forgot his repulse at Howth in the memory of the sweeter moment when they had parted. After all, there was no hurry. She was only a child, as her behavior had shown him so often. At the same time he was anxious that she should not forget him, and for this reason he wrote her a number of letters from Bermuda, from Jamaica and Barbados and other ports in the Atlantic station. They were not love letters in any sense of the word, but they served to keep him in her mind, and, few as they were, made an immense breach in the zone of isolation that surrounded Roscarna. They were the first letters of any kind that Gabrielle had received. The postman from Oughterard did not visit Roscarna 20 times in the year, and since his arrival was something of an event, entailing a meal and endless gossip with Biddy Joyce, Sir Jocelyn soon became aware of his daughter's correspondence. He questioned her about it, and she, without the least demur, handed him Radway's letters. He sniffed at them. If that was all the fellow had to say, it struck him as a waste of time and paper. Who was he, anyhow? Gabrielle explained that he had dined with them at the Halbertons, and Jocelyn, who naturally had no recollection of the event, was satisfied with these credentials. "I asked him to come and shoot here," said Gabrielle. Jocelyn stared at her with wrinkled eyes. "The devil you did," said he. Radway's letters had exactly the effect on her that he had intended. They were an excitement, and she read them over and over again till she almost knew them by heart. They were the first outside interest that had ever entered her life. With Considine's help, she looked up the ports at which they were posted on a big map in the library, and thinking of their romantic names and the wonders that they suggested, she also thought a good deal of the writer. So it was, almost unconsciously, that Radway began to fill a considerable place in her thoughts. His impression had fallen on an extraordinarily virginal mind that the thought of love-making had never disturbed. Physically she hadn't responded to him in the least, but the long silences of Roscarna, and particularly those of the following winter, when Slieveannilaun loomed above the woods like an immense and snowy ghost, and the lake was frozen until the cold spell broke, and snow broth swirled desolately under the Palladian bridge, gave her time for reflection in which her fancy began to dwell on the problems of ideal love. In this dead season the letters of Radway were more than ever an excitement. They stirred her imagination with pictures of burning seas and lurid tropical sunsets, and with this pageantry the memory of him would invade the dank gloom of the library where she and Considine pursued the acquisition of knowledge. It was inevitable that she should have found some outlet of the kind, for in the curious circumstances of her upbringing she had missed that sentimental stage which is the measles of puberty. She had never trembled with adoration of the schoolmistress, and Considine was an unthinkable substitute. In Dublin she had learned for the first time that she was beautiful, and that her country clothes did not show her at her best. This, together with Radway's attentions, had revealed to her the fact that she was a woman, and therefore made to love and be loved. She loved Roscarna passionately, but in this neither Roscarna nor its inhabitants could help her. Under the most romantic circumstances in the world she could find no romance. Her newborn instinct revealed itself in a curious, almost maternal devotion to her father and the current litter of puppies. Jocelyn found its expression unusual, but not unpleasant. The attentions of this charming daughter flattered him, and the puppies liked it too, licking her face when she smothered them with motherly caresses. But these things were not enough for her, and it came as a great relief when she discovered another outlet in the contents of the library bookshelves. She became a greedy student of romance. The Hewishes had never been great readers, but in the early 19th century one of them had felt it becoming to his position as a country gentleman to buy books. The romantic education of Gabrielle was accomplished, as became an Irishwoman, in the school of Maria Edgeworth. Castle Rackrent ravished her. She thrilled to the elegancies of Belinda, and to the Irish atmosphere of Ormond. From these she plunged backwards into the romantic mysteries of Mrs. Radcliffe, living, for a time, in surroundings that might well have been imitated from the wintry Roscarna. She read indiscriminately, and in her eagerness of imagination became the heroine of fiction incarnate, and the beloved of every dashing young gentleman in print that she encountered. Jocelyn was inclined to laugh at her, but Biddy, who considered that all books except the breviary, which she possessed but could not read, were inventions of the devil, disapproved. "Sure, and you'll be after rotting your poor brain with all that rubbage," she said, rising to a more vehement protest when, in the middle of the night, she discovered Gabrielle fallen asleep with an open copy of Don Juan beside her pillow, and a spent candle flaring within an inch of the lace bed-curtains. Gabrielle smiled when Biddy woke her with a stream of fluent abuse, for she had been dreaming that she herself was Haidee, and her Aegean island lay somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico. She lost a little of her gaiety, and irritated the serious Considine by her dreaminess at the time when she was supposed to be acquiring useful knowledge. He complained to Jocelyn, and Jocelyn, who hated being worried about his daughter, was at last induced, after consultation with Biddy Joyce, to send into Galway for the doctor. It pleased him to have the laugh of Considine when the doctor pronounced her sound in wind and limb, as well he might, for both were of the best. Gabrielle couldn't understand what all the fuss was about. She was happy in her new world, just as happy as she had been in the old one, with the difference that she was possibly now more sensitive to the beauty that surrounded her. In the time of her childhood she had lived purely for the moment. Sufficient unto each day had been its particular physical joys. Now she knew that the future held more for her, that the life which she had taken for granted would not go on forever. Strange things must happen, possibly things more strange than the adventures that she had found among books. She was now 17. In her heart she felt an intuition that something must happen soon. She waited for it to come with a kind of hushed excitement. At the beginning of May she received a letter from Radway in which he told her that the Pennant was leaving the West Indies. Taking it for granted that he would keep his promise of coming to Roscarna, she was distressed to think that the shooting season was over. She had always remembered the long grey shape of the Pennant that he had shown her, lying off Kingstown on the evening of their visit to Howth. From Roscarna itself the sea was not visible, but from the knees of Slieveannilaun, a mile or so behind the house, she knew that she could overlook, not only the shining Corrib, which is an inland sea, but all the scattered lakes of Iar Connaught, the creeks, the islands, and beyond, the open sea. Lying in the heather, hearing nothing but the liquid whinny of the curlews that had lately forsaken the tidal waters for the mountains, she would watch the foam that fringed the islands, unconscious of the sea's sound and tumult, half expecting that a miracle would happen, and that some day she would see the three-funnelled Pennant streaming over the white sea into Galway Bay. Chapter 5. Recording by Roger Mallin.